people may come a little later, some come forward. Thank you very much. It's a very special occasion, just having a gathering like this where we come together, perform the Yuga Dharma, the congregational chanting of the holy name. That alone is something very nice, very special, sanctifying the atmosphere just by sound, the sound of the holy name. And in addition, to invite Krishna to your home in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's today's function. The Srimad Bhagavatam is described as the literary form of Krishna. So I'd like to speak some things that appreciating the unique and very special position of Srimad Bhagavatam. Several things. One of them, just start with Srimad Bhagavatam itself. Srimad Bhagavatam appeared just after this present age of Kali began. The present age of Kali means quarrel and strife. And it begins just after Krishna's departure. So Krishna departed. The sages who lived during that time, they understood by both astronomical calculation as well as the signs within the world, the age of Kali has begun. And good qualities of mankind will greatly diminish rapidly. So they wanted to do something. When you have the capacity to do something, when something bad is going to happen, you want to try to do that. Compassion, according to your capacity. So their interest was to hold an extended 10,000 year sacrifice, meaning one after the next, and generation after generation, so that auspiciousness would be created by those performances of sacrifice, Vedic sacrifice, diminishing the negative influence of the age of Kali. And when they were assembled together like that, in their midst was a great personality, one who had heard Srimad Bhagavatam, and so the sages gathered around this great personality and asked a series of questions. It makes up the beginning part of first canto Srimad Bhagavatam. And the final of those questions was very clear. Now that Krishna has gone, because that marked the end of the previous age and the beginning of the present age, now that Krishna is gone, where will religious principles take shelter? Because when Krishna was present, just by the touch of his feet upon earth, everything was made auspicious, and religious principles were protected just by his presence. Okay, now we got it. Thank you. But Krishna is gone, so now that the age of Kali has begun, where will religious principles take shelter? And 2 chapters later, the answer is given. By the appearance of Srimad Bhagavatam, religious principles will be given shelter. And there's a very beautiful metaphor, just like after the setting of the sun in the western horizon, there may be a full moon that arises on the eastern horizon. And that full moon, in the metaphor, is Srimad Bhagavatam. Krishna departed, that's the setting of the sun. And now the full moon, that's unique. It's as brilliant as the sun. And even more, it's cooling. Unlike the sun can be scorching hot. The moon is cooling, soothing rays, but as brilliant as the sun and as soothing as the moon. In this way, Srimad Bhagavatam, when it appears in the world, this is the place where religious principles will take shelter. And one who takes shelter of Srimad Bhagavatam will similarly be protected by religious principles, even in an age that's very difficult. So this very special position of Srimad Bhagavatam, according to Sutta Goswami, the speaker of the entire first canto. Srimad Bhagavatam is appreciated in other portions of the Vedic literature as the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. That the Vedic knowledge is compared to a desire tree. It's still sagging. Part 2. Nothing like a sagging microphone. Okay, so trees produce one variety of fruit in season. And the Vedas are compared to a tree that not only supplies one kind of fruit, but all kinds of fruits in all seasons, just according to your desire. That is to say, embodied souls have needs, and the range of those needs are met through the knowledge of the Vedas, taking care of our necessities and our wants and desires, and doing so according to religious principle, fulfilling the necessities of human existence. That's one of the purposes of the Vedas. But the ripened fruit of this desire tree, called the Vedas, is the stage of the highest form of consciousness of the living entity. That highest form of consciousness is love of God, or Krishna Prema. And this Srimad Bhagavatam bestows that. Nigama kalpa taror galitam palam. Taror means tree. So the Nigama, this teaching of Srimad Bhagavatam, gives this ripened fruit. All of the other fruits and the ripened fruit as well. Necessities of life and the goal of life. Very special. And so amongst all of the Vedas, it's considered the best. The ripened fruit of the tree is the best. Unripened fruits are also okay. You can have green apples and green mangoes, and you can use them. But the ripened mango is very special. Another appreciation of Srimad Bhagavatam goes like this. I'm going to do a miniature summary of the beginning part of one of the commentaries of Srimad Bhagavatam called Tattva Sandarbha. So just do it mini. The author is one of our great acharyas. In fact, this Sandarbha is one of 3 commentaries he made on Srimad Bhagavatam because of its very special position. He made 3 commentaries on Srimad Bhagavatam. And one of them is a topical commentary, according to the teachings within the Bhagavatam, dividing them according to the teachings of the Bhagavatam. And then explaining the teachings in a very comprehensive, amazing fashion. So before beginning the commentary, he explains the special position of Srimad Bhagavatam in this way. He says, I want to talk about Krishna. But before I talk about Krishna, it's a responsible thing to do to say, what's the best means of knowing Krishna? And for that matter, what's the best means of knowing anything? So the term in Sanskrit is pramana, or the means of knowing something, or evidence. The English word's really fancy. It's epistemology. Epistemology means the way of knowing something, the means of knowing something, method of knowing something, valid evidence. So how do you know something? I remember in high school, I studied French for 5 years. Even before high school I started. So one of the things that we did in our senior year, we had to read a book in French. And the book that I was assigned, we didn't pick our books. I was assigned a book by Albert Camus called The Stranger. And Camus was an existentialist. And without the detail of the storyline, existentialists say you can't really know anything. All you know is you exist. I mean, there were other French people that said other things. I think, therefore I am. Another French thinker. But Camus said, I don't even, I think, therefore I just exist. Existentialist. And so nothing matters, because nothing matters. All there is I exist. It's a very strange plot, but it's, that's one conclusion. You really can't know anything. However, in the Vedic texts, there's 3 standard means of knowing, and Jiva Goswami expands it to 10. Prabhupada teaches us, he taught us this in, rudimentary way, but you can know things through sense perception, you can know things by logic and inference, and you can know things by descending authority. I remember one of the times I was visiting here, one of the members here works for United Airlines. Raj works for United Airlines. So if I wanted to know, is flight such and such of United Airlines going to leave on time today? There's a means of knowing that. You don't go to the gas station attendant and ask him. Or, your friend. You go to a United Airlines agent. And they have so that's a means of knowing something. There's an authority who you can go to for something. Now, maybe the computer isn't updated, and they say, it's going to be on time, and down on the field, it's not going to be on time, but eventually get updated, and then you can find out. Get the idea. Valid means of knowing something is the flawed sense perception, the flawed logic and reason, and as long as the source of knowledge is valid, then you can know something just by hearing from an authority that knows that something. So there's this very rich discussion about comparing the 3, and especially when it comes to transcendence, or that which is beyond the senses and beyond the range of the mind. If you want to know about transcendence, you need an authority that is from the realm of transcendence to know transcendence, to know Krishna. And such literature he doesn't go through great length, but such literature, one such literature is the Vedas. At least according to the Vedas, on the authority of the Vedas are directly from Narayana. And even before creation exists, Narayana exists, and the Vedas exist. The Vedas are co-eternal with Narayana, or Krishna. Then creation comes into being, and that sound vibration is made available within creation. Those that have the right receivers can receive it, and then they broadcast it to know about transcendence. And then, so there's this vast body of literature called the Vedas, and there's different divisions within the Vedas. So I won't bore you with all of the distinctions that are made, but there's two large divisions, the Shruti portion of the Vedas and the Smriti portion of the Vedas. Now modern scholarship says this is the real one and the other one isn't the real one. But according to the real one, the Shruti portion of the Vedas, they say the Smriti portion is as Vedic as we are. So without going through the references from the Shrutis that says this portion is as Vedic as we are, as the Shrutis are, Jiva Goswami accepts that the conclusion, not the conclusion of the scholarly ones, but the conclusion of the descending knowledge ones, the Vedas themselves. So they're both equal. Now, which one do we give more weight? And he goes through different explanations, but a very compelling one is the Shruti portion is available. There's different divisions, but it averages out to about 11% of the original Veda is present today. Whereas the Shruti portion is largely available, and certain ones are fully available, like Srimad Bhagavatam is one that's fully available from the time it was prepared by the compiler of the Vedas, Vyas. And the Sanskrit over here is very intricate and challenging, and over here it's very accessible. And the third is the author, the compiler, when saying something that's very difficult to access, made it very easily accessible to people that may not have capacity to understand that which is not so accessible. It's something like, he doesn't say this is me. Sometimes scholarly people, they write the fruit of their research over here in language that other scholars can understand and go, wow, they really know their stuff. And then they make the same understanding available to people that aren't so scholarly in that field, and it's the same knowledge. It's just in language that's accessible to people in general. You know, a popular presentation of something that's, you know, quite abstract or elevated, and only very skilled people can understand what you're saying, what to speak of the implication. So one that really knows his subject can explain it to a simple person, or not necessarily highly sophisticated, educated in a particular field person, at least directionally. And that's what the Shruti portion is. It's the same author presenting the same, from the same original Veda, the same verses, just presented in language that's accessible. So there's other explanations, but between the two, which do we give more weight? One that it's complete. The language is accessible, and it's qualitatively the same thing. There's no greater, lesser. Qualitatively the same thing. So since we want to know transcendence and they're qualitatively the same thing, and this one is accessible in its fullness, and some portions are described as the ripened fruit of all the Vedas, so let's look over here. And then there's further and further. So further is the Puranic portion of the Smritis. They're divided according to the modes of nature, and according to Bhagavad Gita, the mode of goodness is best. So that portion of the Smritis that are in the mode of goodness, that's better than the others. And then amongst them, one is superlative, that's Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's unmixed, Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva means unmixed with ignorance and passion, whereas the mode of goodness is mixed, according to Bhagavad Gita, and according to the Shrutis themselves. So this one is best. And then the other Puranas say the same thing. This one is best. This one is best. This one is best. This one is best. A very practical illustration of this is something that would never happen in academia. Supposing you're a grad student and you have a particular question, but it spans multiple disciplines, and so you're given an opportunity to come before a meeting of the heads of multiple departments in one assembly room. And before you ask your question, you ask, who should I present my question to? And they all turn to one person. He's the best authority. Whatever he says is going to be fine with us. He's the brightest guy in the room. Is that going to happen in academia? No way. No way. But the Puranas do that. They say, this Bhagavad Purana is the best. And they give the reasons why. The mode of goodness ones, the mode of passion ones, the mode of ignorance ones, they all say the same thing. This one's best. 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 And it's best. And it fully discloses transcendence in its different features. Because the realm of transcendence has different aspects or features. The Brahman feature, or the all-pervasive existence, like take away all the facade of, all the veneer of material existence, and what's left? What's behind this? What's the basis and support of all of this? The basis and support of all this is Brahman, Sat. The realm of eternality. And this cloud of material energy is resting in the sky of eternality, according to the Vedas. So that's an aspect. And then there's the localized. Besides all pervasive, there's the localized aspect. Very different. But the source of knowledge from within the heart. The Supreme Soul, Paramatma, is giving knowledge to the ant to go find the grain of sugar, or the salmon to swim upstream, or the birds to fly south in the winter. They don't, go to bird school and find out, okay, it's time to... It's super soul within the heart. Now, it can be analyzed in different ways, genetically, something and something and something. Where does that come from, and who moderates that one? According to the Vedas, there's mechanisms through which the source of all knowledge operates. But the source of all knowledge doesn't change because there's mechanisms. That's a realization or an aspect of the absolute truth. And then the personal feature, source of happiness, ananda. These are three aspects of the same absolute truth, Satchit Ananda. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the key verses of the whole 18,000 is that one. Those who are learned in the Vedas, the word is Vedanta, those who know the anta, the end of all the Vedas, those learned persons who have studied this very carefully have concluded the absolute truth is non-dual, because dual means like here. It's hot and it's cold, not only in Chicago. Or it's wet and it's dry, or it's night and it's dark, or day and night, and happy and sad and pleasure, pain, and wherever there's this, there's always its opposite in this world of duality. Wherever, anything you can think of. There's the thing and there's the opposite of that thing, and there's degrees and very variegatedness amongst things. It's a place of duality. And there's another place, a place where it's absolutes. And this place is a reflection of that place. That's chapter 15, Bhagavad Gita. And other places that speak the same. Again, another class I remember taking in college, Socrates and Plato. So the whole one essay is the realm of the absolutes, based on very elaborate description of take any object. So he takes the object of chair and says, where'd the chair come from? Before there was a chair, there was an idea. Chair. And then the chair maker took the idea and made a chair. He took wood and tools but before there was the chair, there was idea chair. So where'd the idea chair come from? And his inference of logic and reason is there must be a realm where there's chairness, from which the idea of chair comes. There's a realm of absolutes. And coincidentally or not, it's one of the 6 darshans or teachings from the Vedas, from Nyaya, or Gautama's Nyaya, that it uses the word tvam, or tva, like some of you have heard the word Krishna tattva, or Jiva tattva, or Shiva tattva, or Guru tattva. What does that word tva means? It means having the quality of, or ness, somethingness. Having the quality of a jiva is jiva tattva. So what's jiva tattva? It's the truths about jiva. So where there's truths, there's the reality, absolute reality of tva. It's so similar. Almost, the language is different, but it's so the process is so similar that there's a realm of absolutes. So how do you? What's the way of the means of knowing that realm of the absolutes? Sense perception, logic and reason. Well, through logic and reason, you can infer by inference it exists, but to experience it requires disclosure, and that disclosure comes through sound. And then sound can be written or can be recorded, but then it can be transcribed, and then in a written form. That's what that's what's on the shelf here, or table, is sound vibration that's been recorded. Because previously, that Srimad Bhagavatam was available in sound. And then what Vyas did was he wrote it down. And then our great teachers in succession, they've explained it. And they explained it based upon also disclosure. This descending knowledge process is our Vedic process. Just like Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says such and such. And then Arjuna asks questions. Could you explain such and such? And Krishna explains such and such. Well, that's a nice explanation. Now I have another question. What about that over there? And how does this over here fit together with that over there? By the question-answer method, teaching, it's just standard. Teaching becomes revealed. And then those that hear from Krishna can know, or those that hear from one who has heard from Krishna can know. And one who has heard from one who has heard from Krishna can know. Because that's the system, it's descending knowledge. Not only information, but the potency of illumination that illumines the consciousness of the soul, that removes coverings that prevent us from understanding, seeing, experiencing, interacting with the source of everything, the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. Srimad Bhagavatam discloses that. And there's so many nice things to say, where to go next and where to end. I'll just say one more thing. By hearing this, receiving this sound vibration Shrinvatasva Katha Krishna Punya Shravana. Shravana means hearing. Punya Shravana Kirtana. Punya means the merit of the soul, or piety of the soul, or well-being. The soul's well-being becomes awakened just by this hearing and chanting, Shravana Kirtana. It's just like a seed and fructifying a seed. I'm sure in your kitchen you have some kind of seeds of different kinds, some kind of beans, mung beans or something. And they just sit in the shelf for a long time, years, hundreds of years. They can sit in a jar or a bag and just sit there. And then you reach into the bag or the jar and take some out and place them by some moisture and by some sunlight. Something happens. Life inside starts to get energized, and boop! The protective shell that was on the outside softens and eventually falls away when the life inside starts to flourish, sprouting the seed. And you let it keep going, and you get, leaves, and you get a plant, and you'll get flowers and fruits, and you get more seeds, just from one seed. Similarly, this process of Shravana Kirtan, or hearing and chanting, spiritual sound vibration, it awakens the spiritual merit of the soul within, that otherwise it's like the seed. It just stays in the shell it has a long shelf life. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. And it can become awakened, sprouted, by the process of hearing. And the hearing can be, you hear directly from Krishna, or you hear from one who has heard from Krishna, or you hear from one who has heard from, who has heard from, who has heard from, however many times removed, just that same sound vibration being broadcast. That's what's on the table over here. That sound vibration that has the potency to sprout the original consciousness of the soul that's now in a seed state or dormant state. So as that hearing goes on, gradually, consciousness awakens, and then direction in how to utilize the objects of the senses around you, or the purpose of creation, becomes more clear because of higher consciousness. So instead of using things like animals may use things for convenience of gratification or something, then the things become utilized with a different purpose, with the purpose of how consciousness can become elevated further and further, how that which is the gift of God can be offered back to God, like offering palmfuls of Ganges back to the Ganges. Ganges doesn't need a palmful. We benefit by offering back to the source of something with the right mood, with the mood of gratitude and love. That consciousness becomes awakened, and then our movements about the world become spiritual, because the consciousness inside has become spiritual from hearing spiritual sound vibration. The process is like very logical and very practical and very simple. Even a child can do. The child can hear, and the child can awaken to their spiritual consciousness. How they convey that, how they express it through their words and conduct will be, according to the body that they're in, but also according to the trajectory of spiritual consciousness that has come about through lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and gradually go back to Godhead. No more lifetime after lifetime. Punar janmana vidyate. Just by that very simple, very natural process of hearing. So what a gift to give to somebody is the highest potential of human consciousness. Now, whether someone in this lifetime can achieve that, or it may take more than one, what greater gift is there? And in that higher consciousness or ultimate consciousness that a living entity can attain, it's no more material existence. You can still be in material existence, but no more material existence because everything becomes spiritualized. We were discussing just this morning with Devahuti, who is the mother of Lord Kapila Dev, and that's what happened to her existence. Completely spiritualized. She had a body, she was using a body, but her consciousness was fully spiritual, and so her body became fully spiritualized. The description is amazing. And we didn't discuss it in the morning class, but a few verses ago, Prabhupada is very clear. He said, this is accessible for everybody. You too can experience this in its fullness. It's just taking that sound vibration, Shrinvanti, Gayanti, Grinanti. Hearing, vibrating, letting it enter your heart, and then it rules your heart. It rules your life, and your life becomes guided by spiritual sound, by spiritual wisdom. Same life, but spiritualized through sound. It's a great science. And coming soon, we're going to be in Gitanagari Farm, and I plan to speak specifically on this topic as one of the sessions that I did, the effect of sound, material and spiritual. It's a fascinating topic. In fact, I'll share this with you and then I'm going to end. In the course of my travels, I met a Chinese Hare Krishna devotee who explained, after getting to know this individual for some time, she's going to be coming to this Gitanagari event. Goes to George Mason. She's working on her PhD in something that's going to help her with a career because she understands she's going to need a career. But her interest is consciousness. She gave like a whole long description, but the light's been on since she was a little girl. Questioning, no answers. So she thought, I'd like to learn about consciousness, maybe I'll learn through physics. So she spent some years through physics trying to learn about consciousness. Learned some things, but it wasn't satisfying. So then she turned to Buddhism. Maybe I'll find out about consciousness. She learned some additional things. She turned to Taoism. Still not satisfied. And I can't remember the connection, but she made her journey to America to study in American university. I guess I'm going to need a career, so she was studying things that could help with her career, but also help with her search for consciousness. And then she met a devotee, and the devotee found her to be, a nice person, curious, searching, inquisitive type of person. Gave them a Bhagavad Gita gift. And this Chinese devotee said, the light went on. So many answers to all these years of questioning. So I asked her, what are some of your realizations? And her realizations are not ordinary folks' kind of realizations because of the depth of seriousness with which she's been inquiring. And one of her realizations is how sound affects consciousness, material and spiritual. So I asked her to write a little essay. She's new. So she wrote a little essay based on just, Bhagavad Gita says this Bhagavad Gita verse is stitching together. I found her interest so keen, and as well as her academic background. I gave her a copy of the monograph, or this little booklet, of Professor Henry Stapp, and he is a physics Nobel laureate from the University of California, Berkeley, that did a sabbatical at Juhu, our ISKCON temple in Juhu, for summer or part of a summer, simply to study Sankhya philosophy, to see if, according to his knowledge of empiric data within the realm of science, not only his own research, but anything that he knows that's out there, is it falsifiable? Which is a science term that says, well, you can't say it's right, but you can't say it's wrong. Because falsifiability is there's data that says it can't be that because there's data. And that's the sense. Then later on they interpret the sense data in a different way, and because there's the data and there's how you interpret the data. Anyway, he wrote a monograph on Sankhya philosophy, which I shared with her. Because he's from, like her, from a physics background or science background that's now taking a look at this other paradigm that's not based upon sense perception or inference by logic and reason, but it's based upon this descending knowledge of how the world is made up, matter and spirit. And he's been exploring this for, as a Nobel laureate in physics, he's been exploring it with great interest. So they were talking the same language, basically. A scientist looking at the Vedas. Very interesting. I haven't decided yet, but I was thinking just to circulate this little 3 or 4 page thing that she wrote. It's a new devotee. But very thoughtful and, quoting, not just perhaps maybe, or it's my opinion, or I read something over there and something, just Bhagavad Gita. And some verses of the Bhagavatam and connecting the dots. And how sound affects consciousness in the material way and how sound affects consciousness in the spiritual way. Because her fascination is consciousness. So I shared with her some other things from Tattva Sandarbha about consciousness and comparing the Buddhist conception of consciousness and the Vedic conception of consciousness. It's very interesting. And how do we know? So back to the starting point. How do we know anything? Well, there's standard means of knowledge. You can see it. And so then you can know it because you can see it. But then the senses are imperfect. Well, you can reason something. I mean, the classic example from the Vedas is there's smoke on the mountain. Wherever there's smoke, there's fire. So there must be a fire on the mountain. You infer there must be a fire on the mountain because there's smoke on the mountain. But it could be some other cause. It could be it's imperfect. So how do you get perfect? What to speak of transcendence that's beyond your ability to see or to infer? Perhaps, maybe. But so this descending knowledge through sound vibration, when connecting with consciousness, it sprouts the dormant consciousness that's within every living being. Especially effective in the human form of life, but effective with all forms of life. Very special. And to have that invited into your home in a recorded form, you can just wait for you to go pick it up and open it up and hear some of this recorded sound, vibrate it aloud, or read and try to understand through the explanations given by our acharyas. And something happens. The light goes on. Wow. According to both Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, that's the purpose of life, is realization of the true self, the eternal true self in fullness. It's progressive, step by step by step, but it begins through sound. So it's a great opportunity, great blessing, great fortune. And thank you for inviting Krishna in the form of his literary feature, the Padma Purana, last thing. Padma Purana speaks of the 12 cantos of the Bhagavatam being like the body of Krishna. The first 2 cantos are his 2 lotus feet. And if you approach the Lord's lotus feet, you got him, because his feet are connected. And then the next 2 cantos, his legs, and then his waist, and then his torso, and then his chest, and then his shoulders, and his beautiful smiling face. 12 cantos. His form. He's revealing his form through these 12 cantos. His personal presence is there in this very colorful set of volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam. If you don't open the book and don't receive the sound vibration, it'll look like another book. But it doesn't have the effect that other books have. Other books don't have that effect. Try it. I've read, we've all read so many books. It just doesn't have the same effect. It's very special. Very special. So many things more to say, but I'll stop and see if there's any comments or discussion from anyone? Yes.
I have a question about, I'm not very clear what meant by the sound has an effect on a material effect and a spiritual effect.
There's material sound and there's spiritual sound. Material sound is governed by or influenced by modes of nature. And spiritual, the mode of goodness sound has one effect, mode of passion sound has another effect, mode of ignorance sound has another effect. And then there's spiritual sound. It acts on the spiritual platform.
So when you're talking about that vibration,
Yeah.
are you referring to a physical or sound vibration?
Well, there's physical and there's spiritual.
Are they both important?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how about if someone, is deaf?
It acts on the soul. Spiritual sound acts on the soul.
But the material doesn't. And you said that both are important.
Well, both are important. I said both are important because we use knowledge. I mean, we're in a house. You don't build a house with spiritual sound vibration. You have your educated people doing things to build a house, and etc., etc. So it's important for the needs of the body, and spiritual sound is the need of the soul, and they're meant to go together. Of the two, the spiritual sound vibration is more important.
So the people that lack hearing, are they in disadvantage?
Yes. It's the Vedic picture is all ability comes from God, and if some ability is restricted, it has to do with karma. You're familiar with the term. So someone has, they're really skilled at something, and some people try and try and try and try and try and try and try. Skill doesn't come. Why? It's their past activity, and their good karma enables them to do something with facility, with ease. It's material. It's karma related, which is material. So somebody is deaf, that's a karma situation. Good news is, spiritual sound vibration isn't dependent upon karma. All you have to do is be a spirit soul. species of life. Now, the human species has the capacity to benefit more, but other species, they benefit also. Spiritual sound. Let's go back to the material sound side. This is one of so many studies. So one of them that I'm aware of, so many studies. There was a lady somewhere in Montana, and she was performing an experiment in her greenhouse arrangement, and they wanted to see the effect of sound on plants that grow in her greenhouses. So she set up one greenhouse that's mode of goodness, mode of goodness music, classical music, Mozart, Beethoven, whatever it is, that kind of thing. Then another greenhouse that was, hard rock. And they wanted to see what would happen with the plants. And then over there was, whatever the other kind of music is. Give it different names. Anchor music, rap music. Music. And then what would happen with the plants? And they responded to the sound. They grew differently, depending upon the sound. And then they said maybe it's an accident, so then they changed the music. And the result over a period of time, wasn't overnight, was they responded differently according to sound, etc. I mean, there's lots of etceteras. You probably know a few yourself.
Well, I was just talking about the example that you just gave this morning with my daughter, about the flowers that we have.
Okay.
So I know the experience.
Okay, here's another one. You can look it up. Dr. Emoto, Japan. Familiar with that professor? Some of you are. Japan, professor, has done, his acclaim is, he has this special microscope that he takes water from different reservoirs, freezes it, and as it's thawing, he takes pictures of the crystal. And then, from the same reservoir, once he knows what the crystal looked like, neutral, he then, through sound, or prayer, or something, even mind, says, hallelujah, something, and then freezes, and then, you make me sick. And then freezes the water, and then looks at the crystal. It's different. And it kind of looks like the sound vibration. Something is beautiful crystal, and something is all distorted and muddy and ugly, from the same reservoir of water. Sound affects matter. Sound, this isn't animate, this is matter. Inanimate water. Sound affects the soul. Sound affects even matter. Configurations of matter are affected by sound. That's even material sound. So, what to speak of spiritual sound? What to speak of spiritual sound? Just like this house. Have lots of kirtan, and something's going to happen to the walls. through spiritual sound. And as you go forward and read Srimad Bhagavatam little by little, something's going to happen to the soul, and something's going to happen to your mind, and something's going to happen to your body. Through spiritual sound, contact with spiritual sound affects configurations of matter as well as, most importantly, the soul. Most importantly, the soul. So back to your question, what about people that are deaf? It still acts. Spiritual sound. Now, supposing somebody's deaf and they hear these 3 types of music. I don't know what studies have been done, but I imagine there'd be some kind of an effect.
So, another question.
Yeah.
Can I?
Sure.
So you spoke about, how we are able to explain things. And you used, in fact, the Greek word epistemology, which comes from episteme. I'm Greek myself. Science, right? But you said there are 3 ways, right? One is our perception. Now, a perception...
Sense perception.
Yeah, sense perception. The sense perception is totally, to be very honest, fault, right?
Yeah.
I was watching a documentary a few days ago, even we cannot even see the real colors. So perception,
Fallible.
it's not much to carry.
Fallible. We
Yes,
use that
correct.
word, fallible.
Yes. The second one, though, is logic.
Yeah.
And, I will interpret logic basically a kind of a scientific interpretation, right? Using mathematics, physics, whatever tools we have today. Not that we know everything, obviously, because that's why we go to transcendence that you mentioned. But isn't there a point that we can reach through logic to interpret everything that will not need that transcendence?
Would you like to know Krishna's answer to that question? Yes. It's in Bhagavad Gita. Here's the Sanskrit. Bahunam janmanam ante gyanavan mam prapadyate Vasudev sarvamiti samahatma sadurlabha. It says, by that interpretation process, one may, of course one may not, but your question was, is it possible? One may come to the position of surrender to Krishna. Oh, on what basis? Well, Krishna is everything. Vasudev sarvamiti. Let's take Einstein. Brilliant. And his conclusion is, I'm like a little child standing on the shore of the ocean, looking at a little drop. So one can, by tools of intellect and etc., physics and abstract physics and all kinds of, I'm very tiny, and God is very great. One can come to that conclusion. Now, one will not come to the conclusion of what he is, other than he's great. Or whatever, even if you have another term, that it is great. He is great, it is great, he, she, it are great. So now besides great, what else? What are the features of that greatness? What's the form? What's the quality? What's the name? What's the activity? What's the kind of loving exchanges that take place with the great? You can't know that by the ascending process. You can know that it exists. And so this is transcendence we're speaking about, beyond the senses and beyond the mind. You can infer with all the tools there's something. That's this sat feature that I was speaking about. Beyond all of this, there's this, the basis and support of all of this is that. The transcendence, sat, the Brahman. And in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I'm the basis of Brahman. Pratishta is the Sanskrit word. So what's the base? Where's that all-pervasive spiritual existence? What's it resting upon? Maybe it's not resting upon anything. Maybe it's just that's it. But Krishna says, I'm the source of it. I'm the basis and support. So the effulgence come from the effulgent. He's the source. Now how do we know that? This is epistemology again. How do you know that? You can't know that by science, physics.
Not today, but when we're...
Even tomorrow.
When we're saying in 20 years we're going to reach at some point where, the computers exponentially now advance, and we're talking about in 20 years being... Today even, we can simulate, a part of the universe,
sure,
right?
Sure.
So let's say that in 20 years we're able to simulate, the creation itself.
Fine. Let's just take that as a given. These, a given amongst possibilities. Sure. Supposing that does happen, then what?
Does that explain God?
No.
Or Krishna?
No, because the people that do that, they think I'm God. Look, I can create a universe, or I can simulate a universe.
Well,
That's a little different.
Well, that's exactly the point, and if you seem very well versed, so I will assume when you're saying simulate, you know that Oxford professor has already the theory that some other scientists now start, believing that maybe we're just a simulation of what you called it or God.
Sure.
Right? In what shape and form, what name, what his intentions are to be discovered.
Got it.
We discovered.
Read, I got it. And so what it is, of which this is a simulation, perhaps, is it's in Bhagavad Gita. It's a little explanation of Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 15, Bhagavad Gita. It's knowledge. It's not, perhaps it's knowledge. So there's an example to help us understand by inference. There's a reflection of a tree in water, and the reflection of the tree, the branches are growing down and the roots are growing up. No such trees. It's the simulation of the ones on the other shore that the branches are growing up and the roots are growing down. But in the reflection or the simulation, it's upside down. So from this you can infer what that is. By inference, you can infer what it is. But you don't know. By direct experience, you can infer through the faculties of the mind, and you can even simulate one. You can even simulate another one by inference and technology and so forth. But what it is, you'll not have the experience according to Bhagavad Gita, except through the descending revelation of that transcendence to you. Now even the knowledge to do the simulated one, that's an ability that comes from from that source. But it's still not the experience of it. It's not, because the fullness is by disclosure, which comes for those who are qualified. And qualified not just by intellectual skill, but qualified by the quality of love and devotion. Just like you, or any one of us. We do things and we share things with people, and there's some things we only share with people that are really close. It's natural. Krishna's like that. Why do we get that? Because Krishna's like that. And the intimacy of him is disclosed to those who have love for him. He reveals things that ordinary people, even if he revealed it to ordinary people, they wouldn't get it because they're ordinary people. They don't have that closeness with him. Chapter 9 of Bhagavad Gita is like that. Most confidential knowledge. So confidential, even he spells it out and they still don't get it. Very confidential, just like there may be two people that know each other. Maybe, and listening to a conversation between you and your wife. She's understanding everything you're saying. You're understanding everything that she's understanding. I don't understand anything that either of you are saying. Certain conversations. Because you understand each other. There's the closeness and love and an affection for one another. So you can say things in ways you're not deliberately coding it so no one can understand. Maybe you would do that, depending. But otherwise, because of the intimacy of the relationship, you understand each other perfectly, and a third person may not. So, where does that come from? It comes from it. It comes from the Absolute. The fullness of disclosure of the source of everything comes from intimacy of loving exchange with that source. And it's revealed in Bhagavad Gita how you can act in that way, and it's further expanded over here in Srimad Bhagavatam. And what's it like? What does it feel like? We're just discussing this morning the class at the temple what Devahuti was feeling, what she was experiencing, and the people around her, how they were relating with her, and it's really wonderful. It's not just by advancement of knowledge. You can't get there just by, you can get to acknowledgement that, like I just described Einstein said, the ocean, and here's a drop. The simulation of something of it we're perhaps a simulation of. And then make machinery that can make another one. It's interesting discussion, but it doesn't give revelation of the Absolute. And that's chapter 10, Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, beginning of chapter 10, nobody knows me. Even the greatest sages, the highest, they don't know me. Why? Because I exist outside of their realm and before they exist. But they can know me if I disclose myself. So I'm now going to disclose myself to you, Arjun. Because you're my dear friend and devotee. Here I am. And Arjuna goes, wow. I was thinking of you as my friend, and now I understand it's far more than that. It's that kind of disclosure that, not just wisdom literature that kind of sounds like the ascending kind, it's the descending kind. From Krishna himself, or those that have received from Krishna and they're sharing with us. That's what this Bhagavatam is.
So basically, if Krishna doesn't give us mercy, we cannot know everything.
In simple terms, yeah.
Simple terms.
Now, we can help become more qualified to receive mercy, and part of it is being eager for it. And no harm being a scientist, provided, there's the willingness to receive mercy, then it becomes complete. And if there's some antagonism towards the source of everything, then you'll never know, because the mercy is blocked. The fullness of mercy is blocked. Some mercy is there, for sure, for everybody. Just that we breathe and move about and can hear. Mercy. Something else? Yes.
Right. Thank you for the nice lecture. Bhagavatam is Krishna,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of information in that.
More than information, but lots of information.
Yeah, lots of information. Sometimes you cannot be, you're not able to absorb it.
Right.
So, what is the way to approach Bhagavatam?
Continue to hear.
To continue to hear.
Yeah.
Even if we don't understand, it's okay.
Hear again.
Hear again.
Yeah, continue to hear and hear again and hear again. Because it's not the same as importing some data and putting it on your hard drive, and then you work with it. It's not that kind. It's knowledge that's already within. And it needs to be awakened. I mean, it's knowledge, but it's knowledge that's already within. Details and details. We just forgot. Because we forgot Krishna, we forgot all of the things that are in relation to Krishna. It's that kind of knowledge. Oh, yeah. Not exactly, oh, now I remember, but, consciousness becomes awakened.
So, on the first instance, for our first life, because we talked about, through the different lives that we experience, right?
Yes.
Karma.
Yes.
So, on the first instance that we become alive, because there must be a first instance,
Why?
right?
Why? The soul is eternal. Why there must be a first?
Okay, if there is an infinite, then we would reach that goal of become one with Krishna
Why?
at some point. What? Because
Not
it's
necessarily.
because
Supposing you don't want to. Krishna doesn't force you.
yeah, but an infinite number of possibilities entails all the possibilities. That means that one of them will be that you are able to get with Krishna, and from there on, you don't need any other. No?
No. You want to know what Krishna says?
What does he say?
If the living entity, I'm paraphrasing, if the living entity so desires, he can perpetually remain in the material world. So there's a factor of will, of choice. It's one of the essential teachings. I just taught this in a university class. One of the essential messages of Bhagavad Gita is choice. Icha in Sanskrit, desire or choice. We have free will. Why? Because we're part of the Supreme, who has unlimited free will. So we have qualities tiny, like his. We have free will. So we have to. It's not just a matter of chance and infinite number, and then it's the bingo. We get fully realized again. It's the free will, and so it's mercy, and exercise of free will, or endeavor for that connection. If you don't endeavor for that connection, it means no thanks.
Can I ask you a
Sure.
little bit of scientific? So how do you feel about verses.
Multi-universes?
Yes.
Sure, why not?
Why not? Now, if we agree that, let's say, there is, some chance that there are
Multi-dimensional space.
Yes. No, multi-dimensional. I'm talking about multi-universes.
Sure.
Then what you're saying, though, that someone can, remain in that materialistic world forever,
Yeah.
based on that theory,
Which theory?
is not possible. Of multi-universes, because supposedly, if there are multi-universes, if we take that as given, then supposedly each one of us is experiencing a different moment in each one of them, and if these are an infinite numbers, I will assume that this knowledge that you're talking about, somewhere comes
It's going to
together.
touch you.
Yeah, no?
But you still have to say yes. It can touch you and you can say
Well,
no.
I don't have to say yes into this universe, but maybe I have said yes.
But maybe and maybe not, because free will is operative in that other universe and all the other ones. Free will is operative. You have to say yes. If it's going to be a connect, you got to say yes, because you can, it's 1 or 0, right? You can say no.
Yes.
Supposing you just keep saying no. In fact, coming here is because we said no. And you can just repeat it and repeat it. No. N number of times. You have to say once, yes. More than once, you have to say an ongoing yes. This is the topic that we're going to be discussing in Gita Nagari. Say yes to Krishna.
How about free will?
That's free will, that's saying yes. You can also say no.
But what I'm saying is that a discussion also? Because you
Sure.
assume that there is free will, but, again, there are several theories that, time and space is all predetermined because it already exists.
Okay,
So what is
that's a
the
nice
free
theory.
will?
But what does Krishna say?
Well, I'm going to start reading. I know the one side of this, and that's why the books are there, because I want to, challenge myself and question.
Sure.
You need a one-on-one.
And when you read it, it's not that you have to just say, okay, I'm going to turn off my discriminating power and just, say yes. Don't do that. That's a mistake.
I would
You
never-
wouldn't be able to do it anyways, but that's not
That's
recommended.
the problem.
No, it's not a problem. It's a sign of intelligence. Samshaya, or doubt, is a sign of intelligence. It's directly in third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, teachings of Lord Kapila. One of the signs of intelligence is doubt. However, when knowledge is given and there's still doubt, that's not intelligence, that's ignorance. But, do a little experiment and take your intelligence, active, alert, not switched off, switched on, and go to that. Same as this Professor Henry Stapp, I'll provide to somebody here, I'll provide to Sachi Kumar this monograph, Professor Henry Stapp, and he'll send it to you, and you can go through it, and then you can listen to a man that's a Nobel laureate, check out, the Vedic paradigm about how does matter and everything fit together. And the free choice of the individual. I think he touches on that, probably, because it's a feature of consciousness. Although I just matter. No choices when you matter. Free will is part of consciousness. Yes.
Just like couple of years back, one person took Bhagavatam set, and he was also inspired that he even distributed 4 to 5 of his friends. But he tried to read, and he couldn't go forward. I wanted to ask, could you please say something? I can relay this message to him.
Please ask, what's the question? What to
Like
do when he can't read?
Yeah,
Read anyway.
he liked it, but he was not able to get
Well,
it.
it's like this question that was asked before. Sometimes not everything goes in.
Yeah.
So what do you do when not everything goes in? The effect of sound is going to act anyways. Some seeds may fructify more easily. Some seeds may take a little longer. Even out of the same batch. Just continue to a little water, not too much, some sunlight, and give it some time. Because if, it's a big if, but if the sound vibration is actually spiritual, it's going to act. Doesn't matter if it's, I'm fully understanding everything or not. It may have a lot of filters. I may be in a dark place and the light isn't coming in because I'm under a rock or something. But just keep, letting the light in, and gradually the light will fill that space. Your question?
No, I was going to add to that because sometimes it's difficult to focus whether it's an academic subject or
Yes.
spiritual subject. So you get together with at least one or two like-minded people.
Very good.
Allot a certain number of hours or minutes per day.
Very
and
good.
do it together, it becomes easier.
Fantastic. Thank you. You're a candidate for bhakti.
About Bhagavatam, I have a confusion, small doubt.
He has a Bhagavatam confusion.
So Bhagavatam is written by Vyasadeva and
It's compiled by him. Yeah. It's not creative writing.
okay, yeah. So Vyasadeva is actually Krishna himself.
He's a literary incarnation of Krishna, yeah.
So
He's taking that which is of the spiritual realm and making it manifest for us in this realm, in a written form. And he's qualified.
So he is writing about himself that he's the supreme or
No problem. He's qualified to do that. So you want somebody that doesn't have that qualification to do that, they'll make mistakes. He's the right one. Now, this post of Vyas happens every time there's a cycle of 4 yugas. Just like the seasons. In the Vedic picture of time, time is cyclical. So at the end of Dwarapa Yuga, just before Kali Yuga, or at the beginning of Kali Yuga, there's a post, and somebody occupies the post. In our case, the most recent Vyas is Krishna himself. There's a reason for it, but it's Krishna himself. But otherwise, it's somebody else, and they do the same thing. They're qualified to do the same thing, flawlessly. So, but when it's Krishna himself, or an incarnation of Krishna, making this effort, he can speak about himself. Why not? Authoritatively, he can speak about it. You can speak about yourself. Krishna can speak about himself. He does so. Okay. Okay, now I think it's time for, we'll have an arti, right? Arti to receive Srimad Bhagavatam.
Just one quick announcement.
Okay.
We have two Srimad Bhagavatam sets with us. If any of you are interested, inspired to take, please see me. Hare Krishna.